Hello and welcome to a Tuesday edition of the Managing Madrid Podcast. I'm your host, Kiyan Sobhani. We got a special bonus episode for you guys, and we are talking about Atletico Madrid. One of three matchups. Could be more as the season progresses, who knows? But for now, we got three derbies coming up. So just to give you guys a refresher, January 10th, Super Cup semifinal. That's tomorrow. January 18th, Copa del Rey. And then February 4th in La Liga. By then, we'll be so sick of each other if we haven't already. We are bringing on Jeremy Beren of Into the Calderon today. Colchonero Chat also doing work for Marca. And we are going to preview the Atletico side of things. If you guys want to hear the Real Madrid version of this preview, it's already been done on Jeremy's pod, Colchonero Chat. You can go listen to it there. This is more Atletico focus. And we are playing an opponent, Atletico Madrid, which overall I think has looked pretty great this season, despite losing to both Barcelona and Atletico Madrid, though beating Real Madrid, much to the frustration of Real Madrid fans. They are coming off a devastating yet thrilling loss to Girona. Antoine Griezmann is one of the best players in the world right now. Alvaro Morata is playing great. Marcos Llorente is playing well. Reinildo is now back after missing over 300 days due to injury, but is now at the African Cup of Nations. Pablo Barrios is injured. Thomas Lemar is injured. Messi's bodyguard, Rodrigo de Paul, has a new hairstyle. That's given him some oomph. It's a team that has been shockingly bad away from home for a team of their stature. I don't know if the Super Cup tomorrow counts as away from home. It does, but it's not that a typical away game either. Jeremy, Into the Calderon, shockingly very pessimistic about the title race. You guys are making very definitive claims about the title race being over, Atletico being out. Do you not feel that Atletico can snatch away and get themselves back in the title race?
I think they can get close, but it's going to take a major reversal of this awful away form, Kiyan. 4 consecutive losses away from home in La Liga. The last one, as you said, at Girona was probably Atletico's best performance of the batch, and it still resulted in a 4-3 defeat. It was a great game. Probably should have ended in a draw, but Atletico's defensive frailties coming to the fore once again. This is a team that has conceded in 4 of the past 6 games. They've shipped at least 2 goals in 3 of those games, including the losses to Girona and Athletic, and a home draw with Getafe that snapped our 20-game home winning streak. So, yeah, the springtime is usually one of our low periods of the season. November, December, January, as the fixtures start to pile up and get congested. Simeone has always preferred a small squad. This is usually the part of the season where we have a bit of a swoon. And I think in the springtime we'll be okay. I don't really have any worries about us finishing top 4. But Girona's entry into the title race has really thrown a wrench into things. Like top 3 is no longer assured. It's been very competitive in La Liga this year, and I'm sure there will be more twists in the tail. But right now you look at the table, and this is a team that is 10 points off the pace, has had 10 over Real Madrid, but does not have it over Girona. And I'm not 100% convinced that they are going to be able to string together enough results away from home to really truly become a factor again in April and May.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, when you put it that way, I mean, before the Girona, this is how close everything is right now. And the margin of error is such, and the competitiveness of La Liga is such that, before the loss to Girona, it was a different story. The Girona loss was quite a swing because all of a sudden you guys dropped to 5th, tied on Athletic, but behind on the tiebreaker. And it doesn't feel like you guys are a 5th place team, if I'm being honest, the way you guys have been playing. You guys have been playing good for the most part. Like you said, the away form has hurt you. And the 2 losses in particular to Girona and Barca, I think also hurt you too. So 2 of your 5 losses were against those 2 top 3 teams.
Right.
It should be noted, and you and I discussed this on your podcast just before this, but you're still the only team to have beaten Real Madrid this season. Can you talk me through if you can remember putting yourself in a just a little time machine and going back to that game. When was it? Was it September or October? I can't
And
remember.
it was the end of September. Yeah.
End of September. Has Atletico changed much since that day? Will we get a similar Atletico? Can you talk me through what has and hasn't changed?
What's changed since then? Well, Atletico have had some injuries to deal with that really, really harmed our squad depth. That was around the time Tomolema went out with an Achilles injury. He's expected back before the end of the season, though, which is frankly kind of amazing and isn't really getting talked about enough. But yeah, since then we've had the dip in form, especially away from home. The losses to Barcelona and Athletic, as you said, hurt, but a loss to Las Palmas on Gran Canaria at that time was really not a very good display. We really had to huff and puff to home wins over Mallorca and Sevilla before Christmas. Just barely held on to beat Almeria, who are almost surely going to get relegated, and did the first half of the season with 0 wins. One key injury that has really affected us, and we really need him back soon, is Pablo Barrios. Barrios exploded onto the scene last season, became a full-fledged first-team squad member, got a contract extension to 2028, and entered this season not really expected to have a major role, but because of poor squad planning, Barrios has been kind of ushered into a hugely significant role. He has been the backup pivot for Koke. Thank God Koke has stayed healthy, because I don't know where we'd be without him. He's been the backup 5. He's played as an interior, and he has been really consistent. He's a really good passer. He is really dynamic on the ball. When he is on the ball, it just moves forward. And we don't, other than De Paul, we don't really have a midfielder like that. And without Barrios, we have been much less dynamic. We've been much more stagnant in midfield, and it's led to these really wonky and inconsistent results as of late. Our squad depth has really been tested. Other than Morata and Griezmann, we haven't had any consistency from our forward quartet. Angel Correa has 2 goals in the past 16 games, as questions about his future are starting to come into play. Memphis's future is also in doubt. He scored twice against Lugo in the cup at the weekend, but before then looked like a shell of himself, physically just completely spent. But Morata and Griezmann have been excellent really throughout the season. Morata especially it's been a pleasant surprise to see how consistent he's been. But in the Madrid derby, Kiyan, you know as well as I do that a lot of this stuff just gets thrown out the window. Atletico pretty much always come to play in these games, and in the last derby, they found ways to frustrate Bellingham and isolate him and consistently create these 2v1 situations. I don't know if they're going to be able to replicate that exactly on Wednesday night, but I think there's a good roadmap that Diego Simeone has put in place from the last derby we played.
Yeah. I mean, I think with Atletico, I was looking at some of the numbers before we hit record, and it's funny because you compare them to Real Madrid, just some of the underlying analytics, and we don't need to necessarily read too much into it, but according to Football Reference, you guys actually have a higher expected goals than Real Madrid, and you've scored just 1 less. Where's the defense at? I don't think we've spoken since last season. And if I remember correctly, at the time when we spoke last season, Oblak was not being as superhuman as usual for a stretch. How do you assess, if you just go by like stereotypical narratives, an Atletico team conceding 12 more goals than Real Madrid at this juncture of the season is a weird thing to say. What's going on with the defense? Because it's one thing to like have only Griezmann and Morata as your consistent forwards, although they've been so great that maybe they made up for it. But what's going on with the defense?
A lot of inconsistency, a lot of individual positional mistakes that we are not used to seeing out of a Simeone team, but which have become pretty commonplace, honestly, over the past 3 seasons, even the second half of the 21 season when we last won the title. Our most consistent defender this year has been 34-year-old Axel Witsel, who turns 35 this week. Witsel has been terrific. He really flatlined in the second half of last season, but he has started, I think, all but one game in central defense. His ball playing ability has been really, really important for us. His calmness and composure have been really, really important. And those are qualities that, other than maybe Azpilicueta at times, that we haven't really had from our defense this season. Mario Hermoso has been a regular, a fixed starter when available, but we know Hermoso is kind of known for a headless chicken act. Sometimes Hermoso will just run around in defense or lose someone from a set piece, and it has devastating consequences. Hermoso's concentration errors have long been an issue that we have tried to mask, sometimes more successfully than others. I'm really concerned about the form of Nahuel Molina, because we talked about Molina last year. Had a difficult start to life at Atletico, and then the World Cup came, and he became a champion with Argentina and enjoyed a splendid second half of the season. Now he's gotten a new contract to 2028. There's not really true competition for him at his position, despite Simeone trying to manufacture some. Molina's form over the past 6 weeks has been largely pretty terrible. Stefan Savic, who just turned 33, looks washed up, more or less. There are rumors that he could go to Turkey by the end of the month. Jose Maria Jimenez is our best central defender when healthy, but he's never really healthy. I think the major success story in our defense this year is that Simeone has been able to not mask, but he's been able to reinforce the left side of defense. Yannick Carrasco went to Saudi Arabia, of course, at the start of the season, not over the summer, after the season had started. And Samuel Lino and Rodrigo Riquelme have been playing at left wing back, and both have done pretty well. Lino is more or less now the regular starter there, and he's had an excellent season. He's developing as a defender and has added a lot in terms of our combination play, and some end product from the left-hand side. So I guess that's a long answer. The short answer is we have several older players who aren't as athletic or as good on the ball as you need to be in 2024. And I think our structure has remained fine, but the individual performances and the individual mistakes have really added up.
You mentioned Carrasco, like I forgot he existed, and like it's so crazy how a lot of these players who went to Saudi, to me, just disappeared. I mean, you just forget about them. Apart from Cristiano, who, because he scored so many goals in 2023, it's impossible not to be reminded constantly about all the goals he's scoring and the clips that get shared around. But I mean, Carrasco, I have no idea how he's doing. I don't know if you do either, but he was a very great two-way wing back of sorts, and he adopted that role with Belgium too, and he was doing similar stuff with Atletico. De Paul, would you say he's playing a little bit better now?
Yes.
Like yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I would. This has been a really good recent stretch of games for him. And De Paul, my biggest criticism of De Paul has just been his inconsistency. For his first 2 seasons in Madrid, Simeone didn't really know the best place to put him. Like, he was given the number 5 shirt, but he's not a 5. He is initially there was some maybe expectation or hope that he would be competition for Koke and maybe even a replacement for Koke, as he's a few years younger. But De Paul is not that type of player at all. So if we don't have De Paul playing well, we're not going to be able to progress the ball really well through midfield. What De Paul does better than really any other midfielder we have is he gets on the ball and he carries it. He will carry it 30, 40 yards if he wants to. He's press resistant. It can be tough to get the ball off him, but I think Simeone needs to demand that consistency from him, because De Paul is also really prone to a lot of just heavy touches. His passing range is expansive and ambitious, but when those 20, 30-yard Hollywood passes don't connect, teams come up the other way and hit us in transition. So if we have this level of consistency where De Paul is playing with the tactical discipline and intelligence that we need out of a midfielder in his position, playing his role, I think we are a much better team for it. And De Paul, to his credit, I'd say really over the past month, just before he got the new hairdo, the blonde cornrows, incredible look. I'd say over the past month, De Paul has been in really good form. He played well against Girona, assisted 2 of Morata's 3 goals for his hat trick, 10 shot creating actions and 3 goal creating actions in that game. I think Simeone would have preferred to rest him against Lugo over the weekend, but because the first half went the way it did, De Paul had to play in the second half. Even still, when De Paul is at his best, he's probably our second best midfielder behind Koke.
Koke, who himself wildly inconsistent too. I mean, I think, I don't know if it was a Girona game or a Sevilla game where he was just all over the place, and that my frustration. I mean, I'm not a Colchonero, but I get so frustrated watching Koke play. Even like whenever he suited up for the Spanish national team, you just never knew what version of Koke you were going to get. So, I mean, that's probably part of the problem too, is that your best midfielder is Koke. Although, like, where are you on the Saul resurgence scale?
I was real excited about it in September and October, but he's really been nowhere the past few months.
Yeah.
He started against Lugo at the weekend in the Cup and had a really, really bad first half. One giveaway directly to a Lugo player, which resulted in a high quality chance going the other way. It makes me sad, man, to watch Saul now, because we remember when he was in his early 20s and just a fixed starter in this team. He got that long-term contract, which still has 2 years to run on it. And Saul he was incredible. He could do a little bit of everything. He was our best midfielder, a switchblade. But he ran out of gas, I think, through overuse, through an inability to reinforce the midfield or the left flank around him. Whatever the case was, there have some Atletico fans have pointed to his diet becoming a factor. He went vegan a few years ago, but whatever the case may be, the fact is we don't have a very effective version of Saul, and that hurts. And as for Koke, I think individually, and individually, he had 3 errors against Girona that led to 3 goals. One of them was a giveaway in his own penalty area. The other 2 were positional mistakes because he's being overwhelmed in midfield. Koke has been kind of the makeshift 5 for 4 seasons now, since the club sold Thomas Partey, essentially, because Simeone didn't really trust Jeffrey Kondogbia, didn't think he was good enough on the ball. So Koke kept playing as the 5. And because Koke that's not really Koke's profile, he can do a lot of things, but he can't single-handedly tie together a midfield from the base of midfield. So it's tough to see Koke get overwhelmed like this, because he's still so important to our overall team cohesion. Koke, at 32 years old, he just turned 32 this month, incredibly, still cleans up everyone else's messes, still runs and covers more ground than almost anybody. I think against Girona, he ran 12 or 13 kilometers over the 90 minutes in that game. He's got so many miles on those legs, and he just keeps going. He just doesn't stop. And the club, for about 18 months now, has really needed to sign a 5. They really needed to sign a pivot so that Koke can play more as an interior, and the club has not signed a 5. And when that happens, you are susceptible to results and performances like the one at Girona.
Well, I mean, this is fascinating because, I mean, we're talking about midfielders and best midfielders, and we have yet to mention on this podcast my former son, Marcos Llorente, who was a game changer against Sevilla, but also that his profile, like, that's what he was a defensive midfielder, when he left Real Madrid. And is he just not considered for that? I mean, one of the things that intrigued me when he was at Real Madrid at that position was that he was he provided a different look to Casemiro, in the sense that he was a little bit more press resistant. So is he just not getting looked at for that position at all anymore? He's just now, what is he now? Full-time right back, right wing back, forward, mid, what is he? Right winger?
He's all of those things.
Yeah.
I mean, Llorente had the most amazing 2021 season with those double-digit goals and assists. I think the only player in the league that year to do it. And since then, it's been kind of an adventure trying to rediscover his form. The following season, the club unwisely sold Kieran Trippier midway through the year. So Llorente had to play right wing back for most of the 21-22 season. He had injuries last year that cost him half the season, so we didn't get to see his best form last year either. Now we're seeing it again, that now that he's stayed healthy, he's becoming important again, which is great news. Maybe not the best news of the first half of the season, but still a pretty big development that I don't think we're talking about enough. He's got 3 goals and 5 assists now in all competitions, assisted a goal against Lugo over the weekend. But Simeone has been playing him in multiple roles. He's been deploying him in midfield with mixed results. He doesn't have great chemistry with Molina. They tend to occupy the same spaces near the end line. Molina isn't really one of those fullbacks like Trippier that will just stay parked on the stay parked around midfield, more or less, right? 45, 50, 55 yards from goal and just ping passes to Llorente. Molina's not like that. Molina and Llorente both want to attack. They want to get crosses into the box. So it's been difficult for them to establish chemistry. Llorente has been playing more at right wing back recently because of Molina's drop in form. And Llorente seems to be embracing the role in a way that he really hadn't before. Llorente has said in interviews he doesn't like playing right wing back. It's not his favorite position. He'll do it because he loves playing for Atletico and playing for Spain under Luis Enrique, but he seems to be embracing the role more now than he had in the past. And Simeone really loves players like that who want to be selfless, who want to put the collective ahead of themselves. And Llorente is now justifying that huge contract extension that he got in 2021 because he's been healthy and he's been able to perform in multiple roles. It's been a really positive and good development. Long may it continue from our perspective.
How do you think Atletico will approach this game in particular? Because I feel like there is Atletico's approach in general, and then there is sometimes Atletico's approach in specific matchups, which can be different and an outlier from their general approach. I mean, you guys are the second least aggressive pressing team in La Liga in terms of you rank by passes per defensive action. Only hold on, I had to go back to the tab. Only Celta allow more passes per defensive action. Then there is like the blueprint of the last derby, which I felt like definitely was more aggressive. I'd have to look at the numbers, but off the top of my head and what I remember from sitting at the Metropolitano that night in pure horror was it was much more aggressive. So I don't know, maybe because this one's on a neutral ground, Simeone will be more cautious and more conservative. How do you see it shaking out?
It's going to be a really interesting encounter because both teams have changed a lot in the last few months. That remains Madrid's only loss this season. Even with all the injuries they're suffering, Madrid continue to put together wins. And it's a dead heat with Girona to win the league at the start of the second half of the year. I think Simeone, because the tactic was really effective in September, I think Simeone is going to try to replicate as best he can the tactic of double teaming Bellingham when he gets the ball. That was one of our most effective displays of the season in terms of pressing, in terms of cohesion, in terms of teamwork. That was, in the derby, was one of our most effective games of the season. Now, without the Metropolitano behind us, as you intimated, I don't know how well we can replicate it on a neutral ground. I think a neutral ground probably favors Madrid more than it favors Atletico. The Copa del Rey matchup next week will be even more fascinating because it is at the Metropolitano, and we'll get a chance to do that again. But Simeone has done this a couple of times this season where he has targeted one team's star and just kept double teaming him, pinning him outside of the penalty area. He did that to Take Kubo when we played Real Sociedad in October, just kept sending double teams at him. Just had one of the wing backs and one of the midfielders just constantly shading and targeting him whenever he got the ball. So leaving Kubo at least unable to cut inside, leaving him unable to dribble his way through to the penalty area. And that was the tactic that was used really well to subdue Bellingham in September. One of his, not worst necessarily, but one of his least effective displays of the season. So I think Simeone is not going to prize having the ball 60% of the time. I think we're going to be around 40% possession for this game, as it usually goes against Madrid, sometimes lower, but I don't think we can afford to go much lower than that, seeing as we can't really hold a medium to low block in the way we could 5 years ago, 6 years ago. It's going to be fascinating to see if Simeone changes the plan at all, whether Ancelotti is a bit more aggressive. I thought he was a bit passive in the September derby.
Yeah.
So I wonder, and as we talked about on Colchonero chat earlier, Kiyan, the new double pivot that has Fede Valverde in it, really high energy, bustling, high activity, high octane player. I wonder how that is going to change the equation for Simeone.
Well, the other big difference from the last derby was there was no Vinicius, and
Yes.
I remember in that game in particular, I think Atletico did a great job on Bellingham, but also Bellingham was so alone offensively in that game because Rodrigo wasn't playing well, and now we have Rodrigo on form, Vinicius is back, and I mean Brahim has been a huge fireball, and we didn't have that at the beginning of the season because Brahim wasn't playing then. So now we have some more help for Bellingham with the surrounding pieces, which I think definitely changes the dynamic again. So there were other things, I mean, but those are just some of the offensive things that hurt us last time that maybe theoretically will be easier this time. I always like to go, before Real Madrid plays someone, I always just like to go and see which player from that team is dominating a specific just statistical metric out of curiosity. And there was only one Atletico player at the top of one single statistic. Can you guess who and what it is? It's kind of random.
Ooh, good question. One Atletico player.
It's impossible. So it's percentage of aerials won.
Percentage of what?
Aerial duels won.
That Witsel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thought it might be. He's been really good this year, man. And there's talk that he could get another contract extension. At this time last year, we were really starting to get a little frustrated with really nothing of his own doing, just his lack of foot speed, his lack of pace, his lack of athleticism at 35 years old. But Simeone's been able to shield him really well this year, and Witsel has contributed really positively. It seems like he wins. He's only involved in like 4 or 5 aerial duels per game, but he wins them all, and he wins them very calmly and unremarkably, to where you wouldn't think of that as a decisive statistic. But yeah, that's going to be that could be a decisive factor in this game. Is, are they going to challenge Witsel, and how are they going to challenge him? Are they going to challenge him by running through him? Are they going to dare him to win all these aerial duels? That'll be interesting too.
Who would have thought, when he was in China, that we'd be speaking about a converted center back, Axel Witsel, 34 years old, having the career he's having now. So
yeah,
I guess we're pretty much at the tail end of this preview podcast. What's the starting 11 going to be, and what's your prediction for the game?
Starting 11. All right. The one Simeone tested out on Monday was Oblak in goal. Molina and Lino at the wing backs, Savic, Jimenez, Hermoso as the central defense trio. If Savic does start, I think he's going to be targeted. I don't think it'll be a great idea to start him. He's been out of favor. There's transfer talk around him that he could leave this month. Would be a big call from Simeone. I think Llorente is going to start in midfield, Koke in the middle, De Paul on the left, and then Griezmann and Morata will be the starting forward pair. Those two have just been unbelievable this year, especially Morata.
Awesome. So, and what is your prediction for the game? You want to go there? Give us something.
It's going to go to extra time. It's going to go to extra time. I'm fully expecting that. I'm bracing for it. I'm going to be ready for it. I'm going to go with a 2-1 Atletico win after extra time.
Okay. My prediction was given on Jeremy's pod, and if you want to hear it, you have to go listen to Colchonero chat. That's the rule. Jeremy, where's the best place to find your work?
You can find me just about daily on Marca, marca.com/en. You can find me weekly on Into the Calderon, podcasts, columns, previews, analysis, news, you name it. And monthly on Football España, I do a monthly column over there. My latest one on Sevilla and the spot of bother in which they find themselves, that just dropped this morning. So go and check it out.
And you guys should, I mean, if you love La Liga, and I mean, obviously people listening to this are Real Madrid fans, but in most cases, every one of those fans is also a La Liga fan. So if you also just want to hear podcasts from other teams, take it as a scouting report of sorts, just to be in the loop, keep your pulse in Atletico Madrid. Go over and listen to Culture Nero Chat. Go and read Into the Calderon. They are one of our sister sites over on SB Nation and have a ton of terrific writers, including Jeremy, including Sam Leverage, who
Yeah, that's right.
who also writes for Managing Madrid, and he puts out some great pieces for both sites. Is Robbie Dunn still there? Robbie's also great. I mean,
Robbie's doing more work at Opta these days, but yeah, he's got the La Pausa pod with Jamie Kemp, who's also a friend of ours.
right.
That's good stuff as well.
Awesome. All right, Jeremy, it was a pleasure, man. Friends for now, enemies by the end of the third game, I'm sure. Take care and good luck, buddy.
You too, brother. Appreciate it.